the part that I would give myself advice is to reverse engineer to exactly where I'd like to be, and then fill up the missing blanks. And so that I know exactly, month after month, week after week, what is my projected goal and how am I doing?
Welcome everyone to UpTech Report. This is our Applied Tech series. UpTech Report is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. Today I am joined by my guest Gil Allouche, who's based in San Francisco. He's the CEO and founder of Metadata.io. Welcome, Gil. Good to have you on.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Now, your product is a platform for pipeline generation. So for those out there, if you're CMO, VP of marketing, specifically VP of demand generation of B2B mid-market, this might be an intriguing platform you want to check out. Now, Gil, on your site, you actually have a quote from Goddard Abel, CEO of G2, and I like what he states here. Metadata operationalizes marketing data and deploys campaigns in a way that far exceeds the human capability. I find that kind of interesting, far exceeds the human capability. But I'm curious, when you started Metadata, what was the problem that you saw that you set out to solve?
It was very straightforward. My job and the problem that I needed to solve was, how do I generate pipeline for sales? How do I generate demand so that my sales counterpart, back then it was Spotfire or at Qball, it was Jeff, they would be able to take that pipeline and close it into revenue. That was the biggest problem that I wanted to solve. And doing it in a predictable manner, that was the differentiation, not doing what they call it, a one-trick pony, and sometimes successful and sometimes not, but doing it in a predictable manner where the salesperson, she knows that she's going to get a discrete dollar pipeline amount that is qualified month after month, quarter after quarter.
It's that consistency and reliability that you're trying to, that's the differentiation, that it just does it for you effectively.
Exactly. It does it for you, and it's not, there is no excuse behind it. It doesn't rely on one thing that when that thing disappears, you don't have it. And I found that the biggest thing, that quote unquote thing that if you have it, you have predictable pipeline, and if you don't, you don't have predictable pipeline, is the team. Is the team or the human that needs to use your technologies and data and content and creative and channels and audiences and so on and so forth. They have this marketing mix, and they have to, the modern marketer has to figure out how to use this marketing mix in the most effective way possible. And that's what Goddard means when he talks about operationalizing data, because you can buy the most expensive data that will give you target companies with intent and companies who are using your competitor's technology, and you'll get a data set that gives you their personal email, corporate email, and phone number, and LinkedIn profile, and you can get a big budget for Facebook ads and LinkedIn ads. But if you don't experiment and use data-driven repetitively to fine-tune your marketing mix into what works, what doesn't work in terms of end results, the pipeline generated versus any of the vanity metrics in between, like if you focus on impressions or clicks or leads or cost per lead or anything in between that doesn't lead to eventual pipeline that closes, that's where the bottleneck is, and that's what we're trying to solve.
Now, this has been about 5 years that you started Metadata. I'm sure it's always continually evolving and improving on this. And for those that want to hear more about the journey, definitely stick around for part 2 of our interview. But to give a taste, if there was one thing that you could say to yourself 5 years ago that you know now, 5 years ago, what would you wish you had known when you began?
I think reverse engineering, that's the concept that I already had the concept of Pareto rule, right? The 80-20, knowing to build just enough and validate it. And we did that. I think the part that I would give myself advice is to reverse engineer to exactly where I'd like to be, and then fill up the missing blanks. And so that I know exactly, month after month, week after week, what is my projected goal and how am I doing in comparison to that? Because that creates the pattern, and the pattern usually is what leads people to success here at Silicon Valley, like fitting a particular pattern that the ecosystem understands, the investors understand, the partners, so on and so forth.
Not reinventing the wheel, but reverse engineering so that you know where to work back from and build it. Okay. Well, I'm excited to hear more about that journey. But coming back to metadata in itself, the technology, how it's developed, tell me, what can you share about the technology that makes it stand out and different from other options out there?
Yeah, so metadata is a novel technology. We have 4 USPTO issued patents, and we have the largest proprietary search engine, if you will, for B2B marketers. And so those two components together is what makes metadata unique. And so the first part is the data set. Imagine that today, when you want to run campaigns, you have to source data. You have to say, hey, I'm looking for companies who are using these technologies or from this size of company or this job titles I'm going after or this seniority from these locations. And it can be very sophisticated criteria. Our solution essentially normalized and ingested most of the B2B data sources out there. So it does the work for you of, first of all, giving you one centralized place where you can create subsets of groups within many data sets at once. So you don't have to go and work separately and do the segmentation. The second part is that we normalized the taxonomy so that we know the difference between an industry on LinkedIn, on Inside, on Indeed, Agent Data, or Bombora. So you don't have to do the comparison yourself. So you can really do Venn diagram. And that allows you to only spend money and time on the right companies and the right people. You never have to worry that you're targeting the wrong persona or the wrong company. So you 100% focus on your total addressable market. That's one part. The second part of the technology, and that's our competitive differentiation, that's what makes us unique, and that's where most of our IP is around, is experimentation. Experimentation as a means to an end to achieve your outcome. I didn't know 10 years ago when I was a marketer what campaign to run. I didn't have that natural instinct of like, I think these words are gonna really hit it strong, and this color of the button, not really my trait, my natural trait, but what I did is set up an infrastructure where I can drop all of those possible ideas, and the system will experiment by itself and tell me what stick, what didn't. Look, this color worked with this persona on this channel, you generated a lower cost per lead, this generated higher ACV in your pipeline later. And that experimentation system is that's a big technology behind metadata. So it allows you, and that's when Goddard talks about inhumane capabilities, that's what we're referring to. Today, the status quo is doing it manually. And so you have a team of 1, 5, 10. If it's a bigger company, maybe they have an agency, they have 50 people. IBM, I think they have 100 people or more working on Group M, working on their demand gen just for particular business units. And so imagine 100 people sitting with huge spreadsheets and a lot of data sets and constantly analyzing what happened a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and making some decision. And there's a capacity to how many hours they have and how much work they can do. So instead of choosing 1,000 possible experiments, they'll compromise on running 50 because that's the capacity. A computer, it doesn't have to compromise. So it can run all 1,000 experiments and quickly, not 2 weeks ago, quickly say what's working, what's not, and eliminate or quadruple the investment on what's working. And that part of the technology is what makes marketers, our customers, successful because they can rely on the system to tell them how to, one, create that predictable pipeline, that predictable demand for their sales counterpart, but also how to do it in the most economical way because it has the ability to do so.
Those two pieces, one, data, making use of it and having that housed in there in the right way and being able to segment it. And then the other piece is being able to test effectively, but automatically, all the variations. Those two combined is kind of the core components.
Exactly right. The experimentation is the core one, and the data to make sure that the experimentation to begin with is somewhat qualified. So it only goes after the right companies and the right people. That's exactly right.
Got it. Now, I'm curious on that second part, the testing and the automation of that. How much is it truly automated? What pieces then does the marketer need to play a role in? And what facets does it actually test versus designers create and other people play a role?
I love that question. That keeps us honest. So the experimentation indeed doesn't take over everything because not everything a computer today does better, and we haven't built everything yet. And so where we focus on, well, the audience creation is completely automatic. So you can create as many audiences, as segmented as you would like. slice and dice by different criteria, your first-party data from your own system, third-party data, so on and so forth. So that's completely automated all the way to finding the PII and onboarding those audiences to the different channels. So that part is completely automated. In terms of the variables that we play with, that we experiment with, we're talking about the target audience. So the companies and the people within them we're going after, the channels, is it Facebook, LinkedIn, is it display, other channels. The campaign type, even within LinkedIn, you can do a conversational ads, it's like a chat, and you can do a sponsored update, and you can do a regular ad. On Facebook, you can do a carousel, you can do a video. So
And your platform is actually managing those ad platforms. They're not having to go into those ad platforms. They're just using their dashboard.
Exactly. And that's, because we identify the human element or the marketing team being the bottleneck for execution, if we were to give or recommend, that will still not solve the problem because you still have to do all the heavy lifting. Here we say, I think you should run this campaign, and it goes and executes the campaign for you. And then it says, I think you should remove the budget, and it goes and removes the budget or lowers it or changes the creative or changes the words, so on and so forth. He does it via RESTful API into the actual channel.
Got it. Effectively, this allows folks to be much more efficient on that broad scheme across the entire gamut, to be able to test in each of the channels and not have to minutely mess with each one.
Exactly. And optimize it all, not based on what those channels are trying to optimize for, which is sometimes for impressions or cost per clicks or things like that. Here, you're optimizing towards revenue or the actual KPI. So the longer you let metadata execute and optimize campaigns for you, the further down the funnel it will optimize towards, because the system metadata has access to all of your marketing stack. We don't go in and say, rip and replace HubSpot, put metadata instead, or change. You don't have to this data source now, put metadata instead. Not at all. You already invested in marketing automation and CRM and data sources and channels. We plug into all of them. We'll connect your Salesforce into your Marketo, into your Bambora and AG and whatever data you have. If not, we'll complement it with the data set that we have. We'll connect to your Facebook and LinkedIn, and execution will happen. And it will happen in the same way that VP of demand gen will do it. She will not optimize based on impression, because that's not something she can talk about to the CEO or the board members, but she'll optimize towards pipeline creation or revenue or things like that.
What's a word of wisdom that you would give to a VP of demand generation in today's environment, even aside from your product itself, just a word of wisdom in what they have to deal with?
I would say be agile. That's the most important thing. Being agile, and many times there is not a fit to metadata, like you said. Like if you don't, there's particular budget and systems, so on and so forth. But something I think always is true, always holds water, which is to be agile, not be set in stone. You're coming into a new position as a VP of demand, the VP of demand gen. Of course, see what works, what didn't work, but save a big portion to maybe there are false positives. Sometimes people think Facebook doesn't work for us because it's not B2B. Well, if you apply a B2B data set on it, it could work. Or chatbots don't work for me. Like, you allow yourself to fail and experiment, fail, and then one of those is going to be a magical win. And you have to allow the space for this to happen.
I like it. Question for you, looking forward for metadata, what's the future? What are you most excited about coming up that you can talk about and would want to share?
There are two areas in which we're product-wise for me is where I am very excited. I'm really excited about product. I'm passionate about marketing, and so for me to see those things coming out and people using them is exciting. So having companies like Zoom is video as a customer, or the Drift of the world, Pendos, and seeing those companies starting to adopt the decision tree mechanism, so starting to have more and more things automated, adopting more and more automation and AI into their decision making, and seeing customers winning awards for campaigns that the AI set up. Those things are I'm excited to see. We're very much in the early adoption stage. I'm excited to see how we traject towards that that adoption curve. It relieves the marketing team from the mundane, technical, repetitive work that no one really likes to do, and gives you the ability to work on strategic, even within marketing ops, to work on strategic, creative projects, which I think is more fun.
That's the role of technology. It should be, at least, to make people's lives better. They don't have to do as much manual click buttons, but they can think creatively and innovatively, and you said be agile to test new things. I love it. Well, thank you so much for sharing about metadata. For those that want to learn more, go to metadata.io and you can check out for a free demo and learn more about their product. Now, stick around definitely for part 2 of our discussion, though. With Gil, we'll hear more about his founder's journey. Again, UpTech was sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io, and we'll see you guys next time. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.